What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Female Bodybuilding, Girls in Gear. I'm your host, Tommy Stiles. With me again, Shannon Seeley. And today we have our first guest, Ifbb Figure Pro, Paige Sabedra. Paige, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So today we're just going to get a little bit of a roundtable discussion going. Kind of talk bodybuilding. We'll hear about how you became pro, and then I know you competed a few times in 2023.
Yeah, this past year, I did my rookie pro season. So I did 3 pro shows.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
I know you did Vancouver, Pittsburgh. What was the other one?
Toronto.
Okay. So I'm sure we'll dive into that. Shannon, did you have something you wanted to get us going with?
Yeah, I would like to start just Paige, tell us about your journey. Tell us about how you got started, how old were you, and then kind of what inspired you, motivated you to move forward and continue this journey.
Sure. So honestly, when I was in high school, I didn't really play a lot of sports. I know that's like always the first question is what sports you played. So I did soccer in middle school and I wasn't good. And I did tennis in high school and I wasn't good. So, after that, I'm a graphic designer, so I went to art school. So there's no sports in art school. So for my whole duration of college, I'm not some, college athlete at all. No activity other than walking to school, which was like an hour walk every day. And so then when I got my big girl job, when I graduated, the first like 2 months was fine, but then my clothes started not fitting anymore because I wasn't getting those walks, no activity. So I decided, well, you're a big girl now, you can go join a gym. So I joined my gym. Let's see here. So it was an LA Fitness and it was in 2014. So I was there. I didn't know what I was doing. So of course I went to the cardio equipment, which is probably a lot of girls. They don't know how to do anything with weights. So you just do cardio. So after a couple months, I saved up enough to get a personal trainer at LA Fitness. So I had a few of those, and there was one in particular who was a competitor, and her name was Crystal Browning, and she was a physique amateur, and she kind of put it in my ear to try competing. So of course, I just blindly was like, oh, here's a show poster. I guess like that's something I can do. And then I actually found a friend from high school that was also wanting to compete. And she was seeing this posing coach. So I would join her and we would go to this posing coach together. So of course, like I wanted to do figure from when I was doing a little bit of research, but I figured, I was intimidated by that. So I did bikini. So, learning to do bikini posing. And just so I didn't have any sort of coach. It was just personal training and a posing coach and no diet or nutrition. I wasn't doing any cardio. So as you can tell, I probably went into my first show not anywhere near conditioned. So my first show was in 2016. So it was in like Memorial Day weekend, and it was not an NPC show. It was like a Fitness America show. And I did okay. It was like a 4th place, but like I said, it was not NPC. And then after that, I was like, okay, I really want to continue to do this. So I got a new personal trainer. And then I decided to try to go for figure. But again, with the timeline I gave that new personal trainer, he was like, well, why don't we just like stick to bikini one more time? So I did, let me see here. So 2 bikini shows. And then when I grew into figure, I did 3 of those as an amateur, or no, let me think here. Oh, I did 3 of those natural. That's where I was going with that. So 3 of my figure shows were natural. And then I decided to try to go to the dark side. So then in 2019, I did my first figure show as a non-natural competitor. And that one went pretty good. Now, at that time, I did have a coach, but things didn't end up working out very well at the end. So 3 weeks out, I bailed on him and I prepped myself for 2019. And I kind of got some advice from a couple people that I trusted. And I ended up winning my class at that show, which was great. So after that, Um, I ended up like as soon as I got home, I went with the coach that I always wanted. So I've been working with her ever since. So Cami Leal. So in 2019, after that show until now, I've been working with Cami, and her and I have had way more off seasons than prep. So we've done we did 2 shows together in 2021. I did a regional show, which I placed last, and then I went to USA's and I got my pro card. So yeah, 2021 was when I got my pro card with my coach. We took another off season, and then here we are in 2023, and I did 3 pro shows. So I know that's probably a lot to sink in there, but anywhere you want to start?
No, I mean, you had quite a journey. I mean, for what you've accomplished in such a short
Mhm.
period of time is quite impressive. And then delving into going pro and then going to do 3 pro shows for your pro debut year. I mean, pretty dang impressive. Um, when you did your first show going back, do you feel, and I hear this from a lot of people, usually that's kind of when you know you love competing or you don't. How did you feel? Did you become like addicted to it after be like, I love the look, I like, did you love the cutting process? I mean, kind of talk about that. Like, how did you become addicted to it basically?
You know what? Like I said, I didn't have a diet coach at all. I wasn't doing any
Mhm,
cardio, so I really can't say it was the dieting part because I
mhm.
wasn't doing it, but I loved the posing.
Okay.
I had a posing coach before I had a prep coach, is what I tell people. So, and I just really I love being on stage and I love posing. So that's kind of where my first, true love with the sport came from. I just love presenting. I'm
Mhm.
kind of an extrovert, so I guess I just really like that kind of attention, to be honest. And it was just a lot of fun, and that's kind of what hooked me.
Okay. Um, did you notice now when you decided to make that leap into going into the dark side and taking PEDs, was it a decision that you took some time to decide, or how did you kind of go about that decision?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I did go into figure, I that was when I was starting to hear more about the PEDs and stuff. Because when I was in bikini, that wasn't a thought at all. But then when I got into figure and I learned about how these girls were putting on more muscle and things like that, I was like, okay, like I'm not really sure about that. Like I definitely want to like still see what I can do. And at the time, that coach that I was talking about before, I knew that he definitely was the guy in the area that could help with that. So that's kind of like why I even went with him, because I was just kind of like, well, if I ever do want to decide to dabble with that, at least I know that I have somebody that's local that knows what he's doing with it with females. Because I will say, he did have a girl at the time who was enhanced. She looked amazing, and it was one of those things where I was like, I kind of want to like look like her. So that's why I also hired this person, which we all know is not the case to be doing. So we did, those couple of figure shows, natural. And after I saw myself next to other girls in figure in the NPC, that was when I was like, okay, I think, I've done a handful of shows now. I think I'm ready to see what happens, and I'm going to trust this guy to help me with that.
Okay. T, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I've looked at some of your pictures from your rookie season this year. So from my assessment, it looks like conditioning got better from show 1 to show 3. So your last show was Vancouver, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Where you were top 5 placing, 5th place.
Mhm.
What what was your feedback this year for both from your coach and yourself? But I don't know if you got judges' feedback. What do you think you need to work on for next year?
My quads have always been my struggle area for sure. I definitely need to get more size in the upper portion. And with that, I've been really trying to, work on my ankle mobility so that I can get more knee over toe with my squats, be a little bit more, under the heavy bar, because I've been really looking for spotters more often with that. So that's been a really huge help. I was also given some feedback from judges to just, keep working on conditioning. And I want to add a little bit more lats just to kind of balance out a little more. and my front delts. My coach really wants me to gain a little bit more in the front delt area for when I'm in my pose and you're kind of rounding the shoulders forward. I just want a little bit more pop to that. I've worked really hard on the caps, but I need more of the front. And then I was given feedback from judges too to just try to add a little more density to my hamstrings. So I definitely want those to pop a little bit more, which could even help with the quads and the rotating from the back pose. And I'm definitely going to keep working on back rows because I need just more density over all, because like I said, my lifting history isn't as long as maybe other competitors, and I'm 31. So I'm kind of in that, like, I'm not young and I'm not old. So I just want to keep getting some muscle maturity where I can as well. But other than that, it's just growing everything overall, keep the waist small, grow everything else.
Do you do anything? And I know people have different tricks. What do you do to keep your waist small? Do you do vacuums? Do you waist train? What do you?
I got my waist trainer on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wear it when I'm working at my computer. So obviously I'm standing right now, so I just wear it throughout the day. And then I also have one that I wear for the gym that I will wear for the duration of my workout.
Okay. And do you feel like it affects your movements at all when you're training?
Not really, and I've been
No.
wearing this thing for it's coming up to 5 years now.
Okay.
So I've preached the waist trainer. Now, again, it's not some magic tool or anything like that, but I've been just very consistent with it. And I think in the gym as well, it helps me work on that breathing in the diaphragm and not through the belly. So that's kind of my tips for waist training.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to that? I'll say this. I'm not a huge fan of waist training, but I do vacuums. But for me, waist training, it just makes me have to go to the bathroom a lot. So I just don't waist train a lot.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't do any really personally, just vacuums. And then I think a lot of people, true, it's just a matter of if you have foods that aren't digesting with you, making sure you're removing them. I think forcing foods that are triggers is just going to blow that waistline out over time, for any person. But there's no cons to, wearing a waist trainer or practicing it. I know that I have bad posture because I sit at a computer for work. So I think the waist trainer is a good mental cue to pick your chest up and to keep things tight, whereas you can get lazy over time, especially me in the off season. So I think diving into training, you talked about all the things you want to bring up. So what's your mindset to training? I know you worked with a personal trainer for a long time. How do you feel your training's evolved from the start of your journey till now, having one season as a pro done? What mistakes do you think you made with training in the beginning?
I would say, well, like I said, I wasn't doing any cardio for my earlier preps and stuff, so that was a big mistake there. But when it comes to training, at first it wasn't a very consistent personal trainer because LA Fitness had such a turnover with trainers. So I was just kind of scheduling with who I could. And I really liked working out with Crystal, the one that got me into the sport, because she knew bodybuilding training. I remember our leg days were just a lot of supersets and volume. And then when I got the personal trainer, when I was trying to go into figure, he was great. He was more of an athletic trainer. So then I got to learn more of box jumps and just more of he taught me pullovers. I still do dumbbell pullovers to this day, and I contribute that a lot to having nice lats. So I don't really know as many mistakes because I was trying so much variety. I've always been just open to learning from people with training and just finding what I felt the most, what worked the most for me. When I had worked with that personal trainer too, his name was Jaron, he would teach me a lot of really good cues. So then I started developing all these really good muscle mind connections back then as well. So I really don't have too much negative things to say about the training. It's just that over time, I've learned to just be more comfortable with heavy weight. And this has been trying to find spotters that are good to help me so that I mentally can push through it. Because I can push through some pain, but I just want that safety aspect. I always had a personal trainer there. So then when I was by myself, it was just hard to mentally be no, you can add another quarter. like, you'll be fine. But by myself, I'm like, I don't know, So
Did
that's
you feel like you struggled with intensity when you didn't train with a trainer, like just finding that self motivation or that self discipline to push?
with the trainer, not so much, because that the trainers were always like, oh no, you're doing this. And I just would be like, okay. I was never like scared to not try it. I just think finding that intensity by myself and just not getting discouraged if I really did hit failure, to just move on and be okay with it. Or if I'm by myself, I feel like, especially with legs, if I failed, I would just get so frustrated. And it's like, well, why couldn't I have just did a drop set and threw off some plates? So I feel like, I don't know if you want to say it was a laziness thing or what, but I just feel like there was a certain time period with my legs that I would just go till failure and maybe not connect as much with my legs and just kind of like get too frustrated and give up.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think in the early years of training too, you're kind of just, you can be a sponge. You can learn some of the wrong stuff and some of the right stuff. And then over time, you're just trying to chuck what's wrong as you learn that it's probably not the best for you, and just keep sharpening your tools as far as training intensity, your mental going into the gym, making sure you warm up and hit your mobility properly, making sure you do enough warm-up sets to connect to the muscles before that work set, so you don't have to think. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I think you'd learn, but you can't really learn it unless you just keep going to the gym over and over and over. And I think for other females listening, that's a key point to highlight, is a lot of how you're going to develop your skill set training different muscle groups is just through repetitions. You just got to go to the gym and be consistent. And over time, you're going to develop your own understanding of how to connect to your muscles in your body, because everyone's different. I mean, we can give all the cues in the world, but it might be a certain foot placement with your feet at a certain, amount of inches apart. That's going to make the difference for you in feeling it in your quads versus your glutes or your adductors. And then intensity too is just it's almost like a trust fall with yourself of like, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to get as many reps as I can with this weight. And once you accomplish things, it's like you create a new level to then try to get past the next time you're in the gym. So pro or not, that's all the way down to someone who is a first competitor. I think there's when a female, I've noticed, because I coach females, finds that they cross that barrier of being afraid to do things in the gym, that's when you can really see a physique start to excel, is when you're willing to take that training to the next level.
And then going back with what you just said too, with the foot placement and what works for somebody, you have to keep in mind too, is sometimes I see these people trying to follow, so-and-so on Instagram and their foot placement. You have to take into account their height, their mobility, their postural alignment. Because I see people all the time that are trying to set up the similar to someone next to them, and someone might have a 5-inch height difference where it's going to change the way that you're going to put your feet placement. So keep that in mind with your torso length, your foot placement, your mobility, your postural alignment. I mean, one thing I think a lot of people do not take into consideration is if you have really uneven postural alignment and you're training like that, your body is going to compensate unevenly and you are going to build unsymmetrically. Well, that's a weird term, but you're going to build differently than you should. So always keep that in mind, that what work for somebody is not necessarily going to work for you. So you have to keep that mind muscle connection and make sure that what you're training is what you're supposed to be hitting. You're not feeling it somewhere else.
Yeah, and just to point out what you said too about the unevenness, is back in 2021, before my pro card, that was the year that they had it in Arizona, and my coach was there at the time. So I actually just stayed with her for a whole week leading up to USA's. And when I was posing there in front of her, she could see the imbalances, because she was helping me with my posing, and she would realize with the quarter turns that it was really hard for my one quad to show on the one side. And she was like, when you get home, I want you to start seeing a chiropractor so that you can get a little more adjusted, and then your legs will start to build a little more even. So that's another huge tip, is just learning, the chiropractor really was a huge game changer with that, along with the mobility and deep tissue work that I also got. But I do tell people like the chiropractor helps you stay aligned, which will then transfer over to your posing as well.
Yeah. And I think another good thing to bring up is that is why machines do have the unilateral positioning. If you are very symmetrical, underbuilt on one side, utilize that unilateral movement and just train that one side a little bit more. It's possible, especially as you get more advanced in the sport, it is possible to grow one side and not grow the other if you're really focusing on it. And that's one of those things that yeah, it's a little bit challenging, definitely, when you're like, oh, I got to do more reps on this bicep than the other, but it is possible to help bring up those weaknesses when you are doing some sort of unilateral training.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Tommy, maybe you can point out to that too. We were just discussing like the unilateral training, and when you have such significant imbalance after years of having postural misalignments, how to build that up. It is possible with unilateral training, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a big enough discrepancy, if it's like an arm or a quad, I just always train the weak side first. And then I don't ever, so if it's like an arm, I won't do more reps than the amount of reps that I could get with the weak side. So if I could only do 9 full reps on a curl with my left bicep because it's the smaller one, then I'm only going to do 9 on the right, even if the right could keep going. I just don't want to, further that gap in size. That's just little stuff like that you pick up over time. You might structure your training to where you're doing some unilateral work early to get both sides firing and then doing your bilateral work. At the end of the day, the human body has asymmetries all over for different people. We all have different things that we sleep on one side, we sleep with our arm under our head. Even driving like this, over time, this shoulder is going to be more protracted than this one. There's a lot of little lifestyle things that humans do that we don't realize create small little rotational changes in our body. And that's okay. I always tell people, don't stress on it. You're never going to be perfectly humanly symmetrical. Even Sid Gillen, Miss Olympia for figure 7 years in a row, she's had scoliosis. And you can see it in some of her earlier years when she was still winning Miss Olympia. So it is possible to do well with these things. It's all part of being aware of things as you go on. So, using that, I think a lot of people probably want to talk about PEDs. Whether you're going to go that route or not is a moral choice. No one can make that for you but you. You can give yourself as much information as you can, but for you, what are the pros to the decision to do PEDs, and then what are the cons in your experience?
Well, the pros are definitely going to be recovery. Obviously my first compound that I used was Anavar. So, it was, I'm a girl. That's the one that you hear about the most. And I'm trying to think what else. I also had used Winstrol for my first show too. So, that one was the one to be a little bit more aware of side effects. I didn't see so much with Anavar, but the Winstrol is where you're starting to get the achy knees and your joints and stuff, and then a little bit more of the voice type of things. And not that I was pushing too much. I can't really remember what my dosage was at that time, but I was also doing a little bit of Clen and T3. So those are ones that you have to be really careful with, which I was trusting all of this on my coach as well. So I did a little bit of research, but I feel like you don't really know what you're taking until you start, actually using it, because we all know, well, at least you would hope that you will start to find that certain things work differently for different people. I don't touch Anavar anymore because it makes me hold on to too much water. I'm one of those females, which I've heard this is common, that some of us just hold on to too much water with Anavar. So now I'm preferred with Primo. And at the beginning too, I only wanted to take orals. So of course, I didn't know that when you're taking orals, just, you should be taking a supplement for liver and kidney for stuff like this. So these are things that I learned over time that I wish I would have known before. So then when I was eventually okay with doing injectables, I have had way much more better success personally with that kind of stuff. And I would have never thought to try it starting out because, again, orals just seem safer, I guess. So that's kind of going back to that. I don't know if there was more to the question with that.
Were you getting blood work done too, like just to see how your levels were? No, not at that time.
Nope. The only thing that I really did was 2019 when I decided to go to the dark side. I also came off of hormonal birth control cold turkey, and I think that had very bad negative side effects more than anything, more than the drugs. And I wish that going back, I had no idea that that was not really the right way to go about coming off of birth control after 15 years. And I tell even girls now that are looking to come off of it, I'm like, I would get blood work just doing that. Like, yeah, you definitely need to get blood work with like steroids and stuff, but the birth control and the hormonal stuff, especially paired with these PEDs for females, that was a bad concoction. I'm very acne prone, so the acne that I got from both the steroids and the hormonal birth control, it was not a good time. Not a good time. That was all of 2020 for me. In 2021, I had the really bad cystic acne, and it was hard because you're like, is it the drugs? Is it the birth control? Like nobody wanted to blame the birth control. They're all gonna blame the PEDs. So that was also a long journey that I had during that time as well.
You found there's certain PEDs you can't do because it exacerbates acne or makes it worse.
So there's certain like the injectables with the oils and stuff. I try to be careful. I've been able to learn more and more that like the grapeseed oil PEDs just don't work as well for me. So, or if I do use something like that, like I do know my Primo has that. So I try to keep that on like the lower end. And then my coach, she likes to taper on and off. She thinks that's the best way for my skin at this point. So if we're gonna, add it in, she's like, let's do half for a couple weeks, and then if things are good, we're in the clear, we can add a little bit more. So there's those kind of factors that I do with trying to be careful with acne and PEDs.
Has there ever been something that you take in where the viralization got too bad where you had to pull back and be like, this is not for me. I'm not taking this. Has there ever been a compound that you took that you're like, nope, never again?
I remember one time, this was like a few years ago when I tried Primo for the first time. I will say that I do not think that it was real Primo, and that was when I saw a lot more of the voicing going down, and then facial hair, which I have a heritage of Mexican descent, so I'm already gonna have like the darker hair and stuff. So around the chin and stuff, again with the acne as well, because when you have hair growing down here, it's gonna collect oil, and I had a lot of the hormonal acne, which comes down here. So you can see where I'm going with this, where it's just like a really bad combination of it's not helping the acne with the oils, and it's not helping with the hair growth. And I wasn't sure if it was real or not because I didn't test it. So I just was like, nope, not this. And then there was also a time where I had some T-ball that we were using that got a little too high, and I started getting chest acne. And I was never getting chest acne before, so we just came off that completely as well. Now, I still use T-ball and Primo, obviously, but I have a way better source. So there's the difference.
Yeah, that's kind of the unwritten thing no one really talks about. And it's hard to because it's a hard topic to go into, but sourcing does matter, especially for most of the things females use, Anavar and Primo being the top two. You want to know what you're taking, is the compound that you think you're taking, and I mean dosing too. Some things can be drastically underdosed and they can be drastically overdosed. So I think how you went about it is how I deal with people. Like if you don't like the response you're having to something, I let people choose. We can cut the dose in half or we can remove it completely. It's going to be your choice. It's your body. I'm not going to force you to take anything that's giving you negative or side effects to the point where you're mentally affected by it. Because I think a lot of this comes down to what are you okay with doing, and and this goes with guys too, like how far are you willing to push? Because it is extreme when you go into PEDs and you're a competitive bodybuilder at the pro level. If there's a competitive spirit in you to do well, then you have to decide, well, this is my boundary, but I'm going to push as far as I can into that boundary to take this. I'm sure you want to take your physique to the extreme. There's probably a desire to, qualify for the Olympia at some point. Like, it all is stuff that has to be, factored in, and just kind of like personal acceptance with yourself of like, this is the decision I'm making, and I'm good or bad, I'm going to push through with it.
Absolutely. Even this past year of being a new pro and stepping on stage, and just seeing how gnarly lean these girls are in person. And my first, my pro debut, obviously I was nervous, so I definitely had a lot of water weight from the cortisol going up backstage. But along with that, my coach was like, we're going to have to up what you're taking. Are you okay with that? Because, like Winstrol, we went up higher than I've ever went high with Winstrol. And just to work on that conditioning a little bit more, because that's what I needed most. But yeah, you don't see how lean these pros really are until you're up close. And it's just like, my coach is like, this is like dick skin tight conditioning. So again, when you're at the pro level compared to an amateur level, in my opinion, just from what I experienced, yeah, you might have to even push it even further once you are a pro.
I think that's a good point to bring up when you see them in person too. Most people don't realize that when you see these stage shots, they're softened. They're softened for anyone. So it's really hard. And I wish that they didn't soften them so people could really see the visualization of how hard and grainy and thin everything looks. And I get why they do soften them. But when you see somebody in person, I tell people it's a night and day difference when you see the stage shots and you actually see them in person. And I think that's just the downfall of just seeing it through social media and the websites. Is just like, yeah, they look impressive, but damn, you should have seen him in person, because I mean, it's night and day.
Absolutely. And for a couple years, I was also working backstage as a tanner. So then I'm actually glazing these athletes, and when I'm glazing their legs, I'm like, this is just like, it just feels different, right? And then I've tanned amateurs too. And like, it's happened so many times where I'm glazing an amateur and I'm like, oh no, this person ain't ready at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, the more years you do this, you start to see enough bodies in front of your own eyes, and you can see them transition and pose and go from not flexing or contracting to fully contracted in a pose head to toe. And you can do it at the pro level. In your case, I mean, you can really start to appreciate you can't really see online muscular density or certain details of condition like graininess, but definitely the density. I would say it's hard to capture that on video or still shots, because there's just a depth perception issue with cameras. So in your case, you just saw, like, how would you describe your pro season? Was it empowering, or did you feel discouraged based off knowing that you need more size to be competitive moving forward?
I didn't go into the pro year thinking I would win a show. I know that a lot of people are sometimes the opposite mindset, where they're like, I'm not doing a show unless I'm getting first place. I have never been that person. And I won't say like everybody should be like this, where I just want to have fun. I gained so much just from learning this past year, that I'm my coach's first pro as well. And her and I already have a good background together. So, she's learning and I'm learning, and I'm just having a good time. And I had it planned beforehand that I wanted to do 3 shows. I wanted to do the Pittsburgh. It's my backyard. I was like, I just really want to make that happen. We had some really, a lot of struggles starting out in prep. I just was like not losing weight for a good 3 months. And that was when, I did blood work before prep, and there were like some underlining things that were like, I think we're good to keep pushing. But at the end of the day, like, we were finding that like the food, I wasn't responding as well to some of the foods that I was eating. So we like completely changed my food and prep to keto, and my body loved it. I dropped 12 pounds in 1 week on keto, like true keto, not the bodybuilding keto, true keto. And it's just like one of those huge learning lessons. Like I didn't know until I'm like in it, and I was able to push through and still make it to Pittsburgh. Now, I wasn't as lean because I'm nervous, and yeah, I probably could have lost some more weight for sure. And I was okay with that because then I got on stage and I got to just feel it and experience it and just like kind of go through it because I learned so much from that. And that's why every show got better. Every show, I was gaining that in-person experience to just keep getting better. And I had the mindset for it. You know, my coach was like, when we did Toronto, she was like, do you want to do a third show? Like, as long as you're mentally there and you can push, I'm fine with it. And I was, you know, I knew what to feel. I'm like, I'm definitely ready for a third show. I know that I can just come in a little tighter and then we can end this on a good note and then start growing for pro because I knew I was small and that's okay. Because again, like I see some of these girls that are getting a little too big for figure and it's either one or the other. Like I'm not perfect. I definitely don't want to be perfect. But you know, it's either you're too small or too big for figure. And at least I got a really good idea just standing next to the pros because every pro show too, there was an Olympian too. So that was really cool to see as well.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. That's awesome. That's awesome, and it's just probably just fueled your fire for the next season coming up. That's the biggest thing. And for you to have, honestly, for you to have your pro debut this year and have a pretty successful, I would say you had a very successful pro year. You did. For I think for any person doing their pro debut, for the shows you did and the places you got, and for figure, I'll say figure's a very I never want to be a figure competitor. Let's just say that because I mean, you guys, it's. I would never want to be the judge for figure, and I would never want to be. You guys are so impressive, and it's so there's so many of you, and the structures are just insane. So I always am like, no, you guys all stay down there. Don't come up. Like it's okay. Just grow the category. Grow the category. I wanted to touch base because I know T and I talk about this a lot with the social media aspect and like as you progress, you know, obviously like your body changes. You have your off-season fluctuations of weight and stuff. How have you dealt with, and I'm sure you get the man comments too. It's very common. You look like a man. Like, how do you deal with that? I mean, how have you haven't been in the industry as some of us who have been in there longer, but you still, I'm sure you still get it. You still get the trolls that comment. Talk to us a little bit about that. How do you handle it? Does it bother you anymore? Or are you kind of just like, you know what, F off, I'm doing this for me?
You know what? I'm going to be honest. I actually never get the man comments. So I don't know. I don't know if that's just
Okay.
me because I'm honestly like, I don't think I'm like anything good looking either. So I'm just like, all right, why am I not getting, am I not big enough? Where's my man comments? But to be honest, and even in the
You're like,
office,
I want them. I want them.
I know. I'm like, come on now. And like, I even tell, and I never got uncomfortable with gaining weight either. Maybe that's because I was never conditioned enough for a show. But I've always been okay with having a big ass and stuff. So like, I love it. I've always been able to embrace the curves. And I guess like I've had people like, especially now, like people are like, wow, you've really changed. Like your off season looks so different. Like, because people have seen me get really big. And I don't know if that was because, again, remember I said my food changed a lot this last prep. So I don't know if it was like I just didn't know that like white rice inflamed me and I looked puffy. I don't know if it was because maybe those steroids were not the best quality and I was holding on to extra water. You know, there's all these like little factors that I didn't know was going on, but I just have the mental space that I like myself enough that I don't care what phase I'm personally in. And I guess because of that, maybe I just don't hear the comments. But I guess in that way, it's just like, what, you don't pay my bills. Why do I have to listen to you if you think I'm too big? And I've always been like, I want to be able to, I love lifting. I think that's also a thing is I really enjoy lifting. I put a lot of priority into it. And obviously when you're eating more and you're a little bigger, I'm just like pounds for a purpose, right? Like I'm just trying to get in here and have the energy to lift so I can be bigger and better for next time. And you know, I've also it was really hard to learn this, but I'm just someone that can just breathe air and grow. I don't need a lot of food. And it took me a while to be okay with that. I'm in a way better mindset around food now too. It's just I don't get cheat meals that much. I think I get one like last off season. I think I only got a cheat meal once a month. So I don't really get cheat meals and it's if I did, you know, I just don't think it. I have a hard time like saying like I want cheat meals, but I don't. I think now it's like I've come to terms with it. But my coach does a really good job, which is feeding me really well during the week. My meal plans have a lot of variety, which makes more sense, right? Like, why would you? I would rather have more clean food during the week so that I'm more energy for the gym or better sleep. And the cheat meals, like, I just don't need those kind of extra calories like maybe other people do.
Do you have a, do you prefer your off season, or do you prefer, like, do you have a particular season you like better?
Oh yeah, I like off season.
Okay.
I mean, I love prepping for shows. I love the transformation and the journey. A lot of people say that they just like the journey. Like some people say they don't even like the stage. They just like the
Yeah.
process, right? That's a lot of people. Um, and like for me, I love to prep, but prep is such a job. It is such a job. And I already work like 3 jobs. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like extra work. So I'm always like, I'm ready for it. I'm always prepared. I always make sure I'm
Mhm.
mentally ready before a prep. But my cardio goes up to 2 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I mean, that's why I'm saying prep is a job, and I'm doing all the mobility work. I'm doing like my full-time job. I'm, you know, trying to get my sleep because I definitely need 8 hours or it's not a good time. So it's just you know, and here's another thing I'll point out too. It's been ever since I got my pro card, I have been single. So I don't want to say that you have to be single to be a good bodybuilder, but it sure is a lot easier that I don't have animals, I don't have kids, I live alone. So that was also really nice for my competitive career.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that.
Mhm.
Shannon's kind of the polar opposite. She's got all sorts of animals and a kid, but it's just good proof that you can make whatever hand you have work. It just depends on, you got to focus on yourself. So I'm glad you've talked about, you know, you said you prioritize your training. I think a lot of people, girls especially in the beginning, don't realize that, like, if you have big goals, say to turn pro or to even win a show, you have to make it a priority. All the things that go with it. The training has to be training should be what you think about all day, or all, like, it should be exciting for you all year, I think. And you have to make time to meal prep, you have to make time to go to the store, you have to make time to do your cardio, in your case up to 2 hours a day as needed to get in stage condition. Posing practice, working with a posing coach if that's something you have to do. I mean, there's a ton of little work that adds up to time invested that goes into, you know, what your goals might be. And I think a lot of people overlook that when they make statements of, well, I want to turn pro, or I want to be a good pro, or, like, it is a job. And you can't have large goals and have a mediocre approach or work ethic to it. I know, you know, Shannon's spent 10 years trying to turn pro qualifier after pro qualifier, and then finally turn pro. And then now it's like, you know, she's basically starting over because she's at the bottom of the pro league and has to work her way up. But I think for girls listening, it's having you both on is a good testament to, like, if you put in enough time, you know, you can get your number called and turn pro. And then in your case, you know, have a successful season that can lead into another season. But whatever your life is, you have to be willing to prioritize bodybuilding. You know, the higher up the ladder you climb, the more bodybuilding has to become a priority. And I think sometimes the social media message lately has been that you can prioritize balance, and everyone's going to have their own perception of what balance is. But I don't think you can live a balanced lifestyle, like a normal lifestyle, and pursue a pro career in bodybuilding. I think you can have some balance in certain parts of your year, but I just don't know how you prep for multiple shows. If you have to do 2 hours of cardio a day, if you have to have this super restricted diet because you're someone who can gain a lot of weight on a low amount of calories, like, there really is no norm to that. You know what I mean? So has that just become something that you've more and more accepted because of what your goals are? Or I know you talked about it being hard with the food, but there's a lot of people who, if they only could have one cheat meal a week, they would quit working with that, or one cheat meal a month, they would quit with that coach, because it seems to be the whole focus of people is like, well, when could I get a cheat meal? And it's like, well, I've always been in the mindset, like, I don't even want cheat. I'd rather have more food that is going to be good on my digestion and good for my training. Cheat meal food, as you get older, I don't understand the foodie obsession.
Yeah, and you said it appropriately. Like, I had to learn, right? Like, at first I was kind of like, you get into the comparison game where you're like, well, how come all these other girls get weekly cheat meals? Or I would hear girls that would get like 2 a week, and I'm like, holy crap, like I can't even fathom myself getting that. And I think it was a lot to do mostly with my coach. My coach has done a really good job with being like, this is why we have to do these things. And, if you want to talk about it, we can. And why do you feel this way? So, and like I said, I've been with my coach now for like 5 years. So, she calls me her work wife at this point. So it's been really nice to know that I just have the right pair with a coach that has made it easier for me to be okay with, like, yeah, you're right. I love to train and I need to eat for that. So let's eat clean foods. And the other thing is too, like, yeah, there's cardio that will be high, but like my coach is like, when I got my pro card, she's like, I did 3 hours, so you'll be okay with 2. And I said, okay, like, not that it's anything to like brag about, but it's just how our bodies are. I've learned, especially with her, that you start to be more aware of how your body is, and then you stop comparing. You're just like, I just can't, like, that's just not me. I like to eat food, but like I have like the big goals, like you said, it's going to take a lot. And I just think it's just being more okay with who you are at the end of the day, and just working hard and knowing that you gave your best effort. Because at the same time, like I keep saying, I love this sport to have fun. But I think that's what keeps me through. Like when people ask me like what motivates you or how do you stay disciplined, I get that a lot with like, how do you eat those foods and like not cheat on your diet? And the one thing I always say, especially again with my coach works really hard every week to give me plans, and she's very attentive. And for me to cheat on my diet and disappoint her, that guilt just like always kills me. Like she works hard and I need to follow the plan appropriately. So I do want to preach that to competitors, that if you want it bad enough and you have a good coach that you trust, I don't know, like I don't want to disappoint them. That's just rude. It's rude. So it's just, that's how I think about it.
Do you have anything, Shannon?
Oh, I was thinking about what you were saying, Paige, about how with your, how your coach had done 3 hours and you did 2 hours. And I think it's a good thing to point out too, is what works too. And this is similar. I've noticed is like if I've grown with my preps for the past 10 years, that I have been in preps where I've done 3 hours of cardio. And this past prep I did maybe 20 minutes, 4 days a week. So it's really important too, is to know that your preps do change. Like your coach will change stuff that what might have worked 5 years ago doesn't necessarily work now based on your hormone level changes and your age. And, we're all in our 30s now. So what we did competing in our 20s versus our 30s is very different. And that's something to keep in mind too, is I think 3 hours now is extreme, but back when I had to do it, that was like, whatever, give me more. If I had to do 5 hours, I would, that whatever it takes. Where now, just because it is a full-time job, I work 3 jobs the same. I put another 30 hours in a week of bodybuilding. It's really important to understand basically that you have to have the time for it too. And just as T said, like I prioritize bodybuilding for everything. I schedule it as a job. Like it is in my calendar as like my appointments, my training, my eating, my food prep, my cardio. And it is one of those things. I was just listening to this podcast the other day about comparing an amateur to a professional. I think someone else posted it on Instagram too, where saying that amateurs think about it, but let life's little excuses get them out of line, where professionals do the work, don't make excuses, know what has to be done regardless of their what's going on with their life skills. And I think it's really important that that does differentiate between an amateur and a professional, because the amateurs kind of allow life, the emotions, the work in life, and the life balance. Whereas I don't know a lot of professional bodybuilders that have that balance. I can't, which is
Is she freezing for you too?
Okay, yeah. I was like, was it my end? I was gonna feel bad if it was me.
No, I think it's her. Because mine's good. Last
Okay.
time we recorded it was me.
balance lifestyle. I mean,
I think you
Okay.
froze, Shannon.
can you hear me now? Hold on.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry. I'm not, did you guys, could you hear it? When did it cut off?
Uh, right at the last bit about when you talked about what a pro does versus an amateur.
Yeah, and just how I don't know any professionals really that are the Olympia level that have that preach that balanced lifestyle. I don't really think when you're at that stage where you are prepping for Olympia, I don't know anyone that's like, hey, it's okay. I'm going on vacation this week. I'm 8 weeks out for prep. I mean, I don't even take vacations when I start prep. I cannot. That is one thing. No, there's nothing.
Oh my God, I tell that to girls all the time. Do not go into a prep with a vacation planned at all. And after, like, do not just
Yeah.
hop off the stage and go straight on vacation. That is a terrible idea, and people do it all the time.
Yes, because they
And
want to flaunt that bikini body. And I'm like,
oh,
no.
I know. And it's just like a show off contest. But I also want to point out, like you said, like these pros that even if what you see on social media, these pros are not posting everything they do. I saw it backstage in the fact where I'm just like, there were things, little things I would see that I'm like, they would never post that on social media. Amateurs have no idea what these guys are really doing back here or what kind of stuff they are doing behind the scenes. And then they look so awesome, but you only see just a little bit of, the things. Like you have to kind of see it for your own eyes to believe it. So I just like, you know, I just feel like it's a comparison thing for most amateurs. But at the same time, like these pros are doing the most, but not showing you because it's not great. I'm eating fish and asparagus for every meal for months. It's not very glamorous, like it's what I mean. But that's what it
Yeah.
takes for someone like me, where I'm cool. I like my fish and asparagus, so I'm cool with it. But other people are like, how could you do that? And I'm like, well, if you want it bad enough, that fish and asparagus is that if that's all the food you get, you're gonna enjoy all the food that you can have.
Yeah, I put myself in a mindset like, well, if I was in the woods and I had to survive, I would just eat fish and tree roots and whatever I had to, and I'd be fine. I can survive. I always think of it, somebody has it off worse. I'm like, the worst thing I have to do is eat fish and asparagus and do some cardio. What a privilege it is to have a warm meal 5 to 6 times a day. That's how I see it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's like at least you had food, even if you start to feel hungry. Like you're a bodybuilder, you get to eat in like 3 hours. Like calm down. Like
Yeah. No, I think the common there's all the social media direction from some angles in 2023 going into 2024 is there's always a way of trying to create hacks. Like there's messages that would say if your coach makes you do high cardio, they're a bad coach, but that's not necessarily true if the plan requires you to do stretches of high cardio. I mean, it just some people, especially in the early years before you have more muscle, I think maybe you could see a decrease in that cardio based off your metabolism and I noticed most people, myself included, take their off seasons more serious as they get some years under their belt because they start to realize like, wow, if I turn into a fat ass in the off season, I have to work 10 times harder in prep for the same result. Why don't I just have some discipline in the off season and I won't have to do all of that. It doesn't like there are some people that just will always have to do more than others. That's a genetic trick. Like, sorry, you got the short end of the stick there. But high cardio does not mean a coach is bad if they're telling people like that just might be what's required. Like at the end of the day, I don't care how much cardio you didn't do or didn't do. Like you could told me you ate hot dogs. If you look awesome on stage, I respect you. If you don't, and you're one of these people who's talking about steps only or low cardio, or you don't want to do high cardio, then you're someone I probably don't align with because you just don't want it bad enough because there's limitations for what you're willing to do when it comes to work ethic.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
So, we're coming up on an hour. I don't want to take too much of your time, but do you have anything goal-wise that you want to put out there? Any shows in 2024? Are you taking the year off? What's your plans?
So I definitely love long off seasons. I will say, like I said at the beginning with my coach, her and I have had more off seasons than prep. And I'm loving how my off season's going right now. I think I'm at 15 weeks now post show from Vancouver in July. And I kind of told her, I would love to do something at the end of next year. So I was kind of, as of right now, I tell people that I've been thinking about the Legion out in Reno, Nevada next year, which is usually early October, which means my preps are always 20 weeks to start. So I'm thinking that would probably start in like May sometime. Now her and I will just continue to keep growing and doing the check-ins, and sometimes I do twice a week, depending on how I feel. And we'll see then, because she was like, I'm open to a longer off season if we have to, and I'm cool with that as well. And I would love to do an international show, but the thing is like as a pro, you are trying to pick shows and see what judges are picking from previous years. And I've noticed that the European shows, the girls are very big. And I know that I probably won't be big enough just yet. So that was kind of on my mind too, but now I'm kind of thinking not, because those shows just happened, right? So I've just been following to see what's going to happen. So yeah, I guess Legion is kind of like the show that I have in mind, but I'm open to other shows. But I keep telling people my goal, I want to do the Olympia in 2025. I think that's kind of realistic for me. I want to get another year as a pro for sure. I don't know how, like, I love people that have big goals, right? But these people that want to go to the Olympia stage right away, I don't know how you are prepared for that big of a stage. Like, I had every show I did this year, I had nerves, and it just got easier to deal with. I'm not ready to go from that to the Olympia stage, like, because I love posing, right? And you get so much time to pose. And I'm just like, I'll be ready when I'm ready, but I just want some more experience on the stage. That's the other thing too. And I'm sure you guys have talked about it on the podcast. This is a very expensive sport, and that's a lot of money to pay to get your experience on stage. And I just want to get a little bit more time up there and feel the feels, really, like feel what it's like to be in front of different judges and get feedback, see what people like. So yeah, I think for my size and figure, from what I've noticed, a lot of the West Coast shows look like they like the smaller figure girls based off of who's judging. As of right now, I would love to do a show like in Tampa or Texas, but those girls are big too. So I'm trying to be a little bit more smart about my planning with what I'm seeing previous winners were. And, like I said, too, if the off season's got to go longer, I'm cool with that too, because I do like to train and I do want to grow. And that's kind of the current plan for next year.
Paige, what's your stage weight now? Usually when you're competing.
So Vancouver, I'll say this. So Pittsburgh Pro, which my pro debut, I was 125. When I went to Toronto, I was 125, but a little leaner. But then Vancouver was 114. So
Wow.
that was my last stage weight when I was like super peeled. So looking back at it, my coach, because I would like to do multiple shows if I compete next year again. So she's kind of like wanting to bring the Toronto show look maybe a little better. But we'll eventually get to Vancouver again, but better with more size is kind of what she wants. That conditioning maybe a little better with more size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything else?
I have nothing else to add. We got everything that I wanted to.
Perfect. So just because I think that you're our first guest, so this could be cool. It's something we can make kind of like a trend with future guests, is if there was one piece of good advice you've gotten that you want to pass along to a younger female competitor, or just, any female wanting to put on muscle, what would that be? And then what's one piece of bad advice you got that you would give to someone to say, don't do this?
I would say some great advice, the people that I had surrounded myself with training knowledge, I think now with social media and the reels, you're seeing too much of this quick, like do this, but not this. It's just very like generalized type of training advice where, the past couple of years I've gotten in-person advice that's always been good with training. But, I love John Meadows. Like John Meadows is just I've learned so much from him, and I watch the YouTube. I get the full duration. And with YouTube, you can go back and watch old stuff because let's face it, like it's the basics, right? Like just go, he's probably done 1,000 squat videos that you can rewatch and learn things. So it's just I don't know if the girls, I don't know what girls are doing, like who they're following as much. I only follow mostly men that train. Now, of course, you got like Michaela Aycock and stuff that train really hard that are inspirational, but like all of the stuff that I've learned is all from men. And there's nothing wrong for a female to try to keep up with that. And that's just what's keep me motivated. Like that's just how they grew. And if I can take a little piece of it, um, that's just how it's been. And I just love training. And John Meadows is someone that's always made training kind of fun too. So I think it's all about who you're being inspired by and just like finding genuine people. I also really like following coaches. Like I listen to all kinds of podcasts like you guys and, I Dave Palumbo and stuff like that, Scott McNally on his podcast, these coaches that come on, they pretty much give you like really good secrets. So to me, I'm always like, why don't more people that want to grow and learn off of coaches? They're giving you free advice on YouTube and it's very detailed. So I've just learned so much. And I guess for like a good quote, Dusty Hanshaw had said once that people always look for the easy way, but not the best way. And I really like that quote because that goes for so much in life, especially bodybuilding, like training. Like people aren't doing enough bent over rows because they're hard. They don't want to squat because it's hard. So they're looking for the easy way, but is that really the best way? So that's the big piece of advice I'll give there. When it comes to like bad advice, that one's always pretty tough because I feel like any bad advice that I maybe heard and did, and then it was a mistake, I learned from it. So it's like, it's hard to be like, okay, so I'm trying to think of something off of hand. Like, I guess don't always trust your friends either that sell gear because it might not be real. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like, just because they're their friend and they say it works, just because they're a nice dealer, and you take it, could be bad. So I think that might be some really bad advice that that I can think of to tell other people, like us girls, oh, they were nice, I feel like girls do that all the time. They were nice, and then they're too trustworthy. So learn from my mistakes that, just because they're nice, taking PEDs is serious, right? Like you're taking drugs that can change you, and you might be okay with the changes, and that's fine. But I just think that, especially in a prep where your mind's already probably a little fuzzy, these are just like the little things where I'm like, hey, like, where's that little angel on your shoulder to remind you, like, don't go too crazy because bodybuilding is supposed to be fun, but taking it to the full limits, is it really worth it? You have to weigh out those pros and cons to that. So I'll just leave it at that, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. This is a good talk. I think a lot of people can find value in it and benefit from it. So we'll definitely have you on for a part 2, maybe later in your off season or once you get a prep going, if you do end up doing the Legion. So
yeah.
For Paige Sabedra, Shannon, Seeley, I'm Tommy Stiles. This has been another episode of Female Bodybuilding, Girls in Gear, and we are out of here.